Alf, we got to tell him there's a lot of people that are just not living in reality.
You can call me a crybaby, you can say all this.
Guys, welcome back. It's another Collectibles Dad video. Today we're going to talk about something that might be a little bit triggering, but it's a little bit of a dose of reality. I'm going to tag some of the larger channels here on the comic book side because I want them to see this. They might agree with me, they might not agree with me, but I think that it's an important thing to talk about, especially in the world today where people are tightening up the budget a little bit, watching how they're spending and being a little bit more picky with some of these long-term buys. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. I'm going to start the video by talking about one comic book in particular, but it pertains to a wide swath of different titles. What I'm going to talk about today is Wolverine #1 limited series that came out in 1982. Very popular book, obviously an incredibly popular character. There's a lot of excitement around the X-Men coming back to the MCU. There's probably going to be new X-Men movies. We got Deadpool 3 and Wolverine and all this crazy stuff. And everybody is excited. And this has got, it's the iconic cover and everything else. So this book in particular, if we're kind of breaking down the data behind this one, there are 27,000 total books graded. About 4,000 or 5,000 of these are signature series, 22,000 blue labels, about 4,000, almost 4,000 of these are in 9.8 condition at CGC. Now, I was watching Comic Tom and Gem Mint. They're doing their weekly deal and they're talking about what books are hot and this and that and whatever. And this one came up, and the one thing that I really like that they do on their channel there is, more so than the pricing data, is they actually talk about the populations and how many were added for each particular grade. And one thing that kind of struck me that Comic Tom had said is there, in the last 7 days, 6 new CGC 9.8s were added to the census. I think that is just as important of the data as the actual pricing data. And I looked, and just 2 days ago, a copy of this book sold on eBay for $685, which to me is a really strong sale considering there's almost 4,000 of these. Now, when we look at overall graded supply, regardless of what's been happening at CGC, a lot of people are upset about it. Let's go back to just ungraded stuff. The reality in collectibles is that third-party grading has never been more popular. On my other channel, The Sports Card Dad, we talk about this all the time. And, third-party grading is the engine that helps buyers be confident in spending significant money in these items. And for sellers to be able to command prices, they can say, okay, we've got an 8, we've got an 8.5, we've got a 9, and they're able to negotiate based off of these. Okay, we've got recent sales here. It makes the engine run the way that we didn't have going back to 1990 when I was a kid. Just didn't exist. And so you're just squabbling around with dealers as to, is this near mint? Is this what, and it's not the same. It's a totally different world now. So third-party grading is here to stay, and it's a very important part of the whole ecosystem. Big thing that people are missing, and it's becoming more and more of a reality for me, is the ungraded supply question mark for a lot of this stuff. And nothing is really safe. And this book is a great example. And this is look, I was born in 81. This is a 40-year-old book, over 40-year-old book. This is not a modern book. This is not a book that came out a year or two ago. And there's 4,000 copies in a 9.8, which is basically like, pristine. 4,000 copies. I have a buddy, shout out Tim in Maine, that's got about 30 copies of this ungraded. He's been emailing me for the last couple of years. Should I grade this? And I've been saying like, hey, you may as well. The absolute numbers that are out there on this book and the fact that we just don't know what that future graded supply is going to look like, it makes me look at a book like that as one that I definitely want to own. But I feel very strongly, it's a $700 book right now, $600, $700. I think that's going to be a $200 to $250 book 5 years from now. And so am I in a huge hurry to own that book, or is it always going to be there for me? And the answer is that it's always going to be there for me, that particular book. And a lot of these books are the same on the comic book side. If you listen to a lot of the comic book channels, they're talking about when they're doing sales data, it's a lot of the same keys. And then they kind of stretch into minor keys. And then they stretch in like minor keys. And everything's a key now. But the major keys are always the same. And if you go back really for Marvel, of course, it started in 1963, which, yes, that's a while ago. But if you compare to other collectibles, sports cards, and that sort of thing, it's available. It's widely available. Now, of course, condition and everything else. Your X-Men 1s, your Amazing Fantasies, and all that stuff. It's all going to be about condition. But is it a rare item in the world? No, and they keep on finding more collections all the time. Additionally, there's a lot of longtime collectors that don't really believe in grading or don't care about grading, but eventually count on it, eventually those books will be graded, because eventually through an estate sale or through whatever, those are going to get sold to a dealer. Someone's going to call you. The wife is going to call, hey, my husband passed away and he had 10,000 of these old comic books. What should I do with them? And some dealer's going to roll in there, shoot them off to CGC or whoever, and then they're going to come on to the open market. And we're not done with that supply yet. We're not there yet, because exactly what Comic Tom said tells me that particular book, Wolverine #1, it's not slowing down. It's not as if, oh, CGC graded, 30 9.8s in the last 6 months or a year or whatever. I think there was another book they were talking about. I can't remember I think it was Amazing Spider-Man 300. But anyway, there was a truckload of new submissions that came through on that, and they were all graded between, 8.5 and 9.8. That book is still, to me, that's still got a long way to go to finally see those populations reach a point where it steadies out. Because right now, we are going through a grading boom. Tons and tons of grading over the last few years especially. All of us 40-somethings hit our midlife crisis. We got back into collectibles. Oh, there's third-party grading. On the trading card side, they're grading 15 million plus cards a year, including TCG, the Pokemon, and sports cards. Wrap it all in, it's 15 million plus last year, with no signs of slowing down. I would make a bet that CGC graded more comic books in the last 3 years than they did in the rest of their time grading. Go back, how old is CGC? Is it 15 years grading comic books? I bet they graded more comic books in the last 3 years than they did the 12 years or whatever it was previously. It's been an absolute boom in collectibles because of all of us going through our midlife crisis in quotation marks, having a blast. And hey, all this stuff, when I was, 1992, when I was reading Spawn books, I didn't have the option to go and be able to sell, buy and sell and trade and grade and do all of these things. And now here we are. We've got access to all of this amazingness. And so this is not going to slow down, but where the danger is, but I think this is a reality check for everybody. If it's a book you really want today, now, then fine. But if it's something where you really like it, but you don't love it and you can wait on it, for me, this is a perfect example of it. I'd love to have a Wolverine 1 limited series in a 9.8. Love that book. I love the cover of it. Be cool to display all the rest of it. Do I want to pay $700? No, I don't. But also, I just know that there's a truckload that will continue to roll into CGC for grading over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And then now take that and put that on all the other books. And you might say, oh, well, that's not going to happen to like X-Men 1, or it's not going to happen to some of these other big keys. You don't know that. I don't think we've gotten there yet. Like I said, they're still finding collections. Stuff is still getting graded. And these are books, yes, X-Men 1 is not like Amazing Spider-Man 300 in terms of the volume, but it's all relative. Even if X-Men 1 has a far less population, but that smaller population doubles over the next 5 years, unless that demand just is there to meet it, which it might be. It might be that the demand stays with it to maintain these prices. Is the demand also going to be there to maintain and grow the prices? Well, we'll have to see. But the one thing we know for certain is that grading is not slowing down, and that there is just more and more of this stuff coming and getting graded. And so be really careful when you hear YouTubers or Instagrammers, comic book folks saying, get it now while you can at this price point, or you're going to miss out on an Amazing Spider-Man 300 or Wolverine 1. Guys, you have got time. There is going to be endless copies of this stuff in a 9.8. It'll be there. If you get into certain rare variants and different things, this is where actually, I don't collect modern comic books, but if you've got kind of the equivalent of a 1 of 1 or a 1 out of 25 or something, where you know for a fact that it's a very limited print of a certain thing, then we can have a different conversation. But when you get into Silver Age, Bronze Age, Copper Age books, we're not talking about that. Golden Age is a different animal too. It amazes me when I see, the old horror, the old scary, comic books. They're fetching 5 figures out there. And I'm thinking like, wow, that's a lot of money for an old horror comic book. But there is a subset of collectors that love that sort of stuff, and they're actually rare, they're scarce, they're hard to find. So I get it. Golden Age is kind of a different animal. But I'm really talking about the books that get the most attention, and the books that incorporate all the new, the DC and all the new Marvel folks. It's the Fantastic Four, it's the Wolverines, the X-Men's, all of that stuff. That all lives in a fairly highly produced time period of Bronze Age, Copper Age, and Silver Age stuff. So be careful out there, my friends. You've got time to get this stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think I'm crazy? And do you think we're at the end of the road? Like, hey, they've already graded most of these copies. We're all good here. Or you just think the demand is going to keep up with that heightened supply that is sure to come in the years to come. All right, that's all I've got. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.